Our guest tonight is a businesswoman and author. She was also voted 55th as one of the top 100 South Africans of all time for her contribution to academia, for her contribution to the rights of women, for her contribution to a conversation about democratic reform, for her role internationally, as well as a former managing director of the World Bank. Dr. Ramphele, thank you very much for staying with us. Let's talk about a sensitive issue within our economy and something you've written about, spoken about, and that's an emotive one: Black economic empowerment. We talk about the legacy of apartheid and the need to democratize the economy, not just the political system, and this is where BEE comes to the fore. Many people say there's nothing wrong with the concept, there's something wrong with the execution. What's your view?
I agree with that view. But I also believe that we have not learned the lessons of Malaysia, from which we copied this approach. We have made numerous attempts to review the Black economic empowerment, and the last attempt came out with this code of good practice. Sadly, the desire to broaden the base of participation was trumped by lobbyists who wanted a bigger and bigger slice for the people who are already empowered, and to others who are still aspiring to become empowered. And so we missed the opportunity at that point from turning BEE into a transformative engine of growth by broadening the base of participation in the economy. And by that I mean to make sure that the focus of BEE is on enterprise development, supporting entrepreneurs, and enabling poor communities to participate in the economy in an appropriate way. What has emerged after the code is a compliance culture, where people can tick boxes and they are okay, thank you very much, and it's business as usual. If we really want to transform this economy, we've got to recognize the fact that it's got to be much more than just simply complying. It's got to be approached as an imperative for greater economic growth, that it is very necessary for traditional business to partner with junior business or with aspirant business people to make the economy hum. And that is an approach which requires visionary leadership. It requires long-term view. Unfortunately, corporate South Africa, like corporations everywhere else, is focused on the quarterly bottom line.
Well, what's happening now is there's a sense of hysteria, for lack of a better word, around the conversation on BEE, because for all the sense and the sensibility that's being advanced, there are people who are saying empowerment is not happening enough. Some are saying it's not empowerment any longer, it's enrichment, as you've alluded to. And some are saying there's a lack of will to change by corporate SA, and hence this compliance culture. And so some quarters within the ruling party are increasingly lobbying for nationalisation of strategic assets, of mines, for instance. And investors are watching this economy right now within this environment and saying South Africa's probably not a place to be sending your money right now.
Well, they'll miss out on the great returns if they take that view. But I agree with you that the rhetoric and the noise in the system is not very encouraging for people who are looking to invest in our country. The idea that you can address the current problems that we have through nationalisation is tragic. It's a tragic notion because everywhere you look on this continent where people have tried nationalisation, Zambia bankrupted itself because to mine any commodity is highly capital intensive, very technical, requires enormous effort. And where do we think that's going to come from when we are struggling to simply build adequate homes for people, maintain roads, and run health systems and education systems that work. The business of government is not to run the economy. The business of government is to create an enabling environment around which we can grow the economy. I believe, actually, when you look at the mining charter and the legislation around our mining resources, the government has gone a long way to making sure that the country benefits from the mining industry. First, the idea of the nation owning the rights and the miners mining on license, it's already nationalization in a good way. Second, royalties that you get from that are exactly what we need to drive the economy. Look at Chile. It's got huge copper resources. You never hear the Chileans talking about nationalizing the mine. The same companies that are mining here are mining there. So what do we know that they don't know? We should be asking ourselves that question. And finally, when you think about the complexity of maintaining and sustaining mines, to think that we can simply throw away those people who have been doing that, we will end up having to re-employ them, pay them management fees, as the Zambians had to do. And that has ruined the Zambian economy. We have already seen where people who have no experience in mining, as we have seen with the Aurora mine, the tragedy is that it's poor black people who are in those mines, who are living lives that are worse than they ever could have lived under a white mining company. I just think South Africa needs to wake up and live up to its greatness, and this is not.
Let's talk about another issue that is emotive in South Africa that you've written about pre-democracy, but that still evokes a lot of debate. Your book, Restoring the Land, I'd like to get your views on land restitution, land reform in its current form in Africa, but also because in South Africa, the government has made one of the hallmarks of this administration rural and agrarian development, for which many people are saying the people should get their land back.
Unfortunately, land reform is a difficult subject everywhere in the world. And so we should have approached this with considerable caution and learned the lessons from other parts of the world where very bad approaches to land reform, you end up ruining your agricultural sector. And you end up, as we now are, with land that has been restituted or restored to people, but is of no value. Because we assume that because people's ancestors lived on particular land and were agrarian communities, they were farming, like my grandparents on both sides were very successful farmers. I don't have any clue about farming. So if I'm to get the land back and occupy that space, I need training. But what have we done since 1994? We've closed off the agricultural colleges in this country. Training in agriculture, whether it's at the school level or the higher education level, has been downgraded in this country. There are very few universities that actually train in this. So we cannot, at one level, say we want to restore the land, at another, not create the environment where that restoration is going to be productive for the people who occupy this land. And I am very encouraged to see that many private sector companies, particularly in the mining industry, are going back and linking small-scale farmers with commercial farmers and developing very successful little agricultural enterprises.
What does it mean, do you think, to be a woman leader in South Africa? And I'll just probe you. Highest rates and incidents of rape in South Africa worldwide. High levels of domestic violence. Legislation that's very pro the empowerment of women, but almost a patriarchy, a society that's working against that.
It's not almost, it is. One of the reasons why we are where we are is that we passed the legislation, we created a Gender Equality Commission, and we then went home. We did not take into consideration the fact that gender inequality and sexism is one of the common South African cultural traits. Whether you're looking at the Jewish community, the Afrikaner community, the English-speaking people, or the various African groups, same thing. So we should have had an education system, process. We had in our OBE this lifelong skills. Not 1 hour is devoted to what does it mean to be a man or a woman? How do we identify the strengths that men bring to relationships, those that women bring? The religious communities don't teach that. So we are where we are because we have a disjunction between what's in the law and what is in everyday practice. And that is the problem. And that problem is exacerbated by the fact that politicians can, with a straight face, stand up and talk against patriarchy, as they call it, and just go right ahead the next minute and practice it and get away with it. If we remember what happened at the time of the transition, women across party political boundaries came together to lobby for the changes that then saw themselves in the constitution. Today, we had this scandal of ANC women booing COPE women. So we as women are fighting amongst ourselves instead of strengthening one another. Also in the private sector, there are women who don't really spend enough time supporting other women, so that the more the merrier. They like the fact that the only black woman or the only woman who does that. That's not an honor. It is it should be a spur to make sure that you're not the only one.
Finally, another issue we need to be tough on is nurturing a new breed of African leaders. We've heard this time and again, and you work within the Mo Ibrahim Foundation, and you're part of the panel of experts that decides on who is a valid African leader to receive the mantle each year. What are the challenges in Africa? Because I think it was last year, the decision was to suspend the Ibrahim Prize because nobody was worthy from what we read in the media.
First of all, let's acknowledge that we have had 3 winners. So there are leaders out there, but unfortunately, those who retire, because our focus is on a very narrow band of people who came into government democratically, left democratically, and made a difference in their societies. For the last 2 years, including this year, we don't have a winner for that reason. That doesn't mean that there aren't good leaders in Africa. I was very encouraged. Alongside the Soccer World Cup was a very, very powerful platform set up by young African leaders. Yeah. And that network of young African leaders in business, in the professions, in the public sector, is what should build the foundation for a strong and vibrant African leadership going forward. And the Mo Ibrahim Foundation is supporting that network. I know they're about to launch an iAfrica, like other people have got iAsia and whatever. We should be out there on the map. And we as Africa have got so much that we should be celebrating. Because as Adrian said this morning, Europe is old and shrinking in terms of its population. Ours is growing, but this growing population needs to be turned into this vibrant, growing and dynamic leadership cadre. And that starts with education, training, and the example we set as this generation that is now facing South.
Dr.